Why, hello. Hi. You had a good instinct with the clapping. I feel like it was a good idea. Yeah, all right. Just, it feels nicer when people clap. Hi, I'm Jennifer. I work here. Welcome. How many of you have been here before to the Greene space? Okay, a smattering. So the rest of you first-timers? Well, welcome. All right. Well, good evening to all. Happy Saturday. Happy Pride. Happy Radiolab podcast, live CPR training event spectacular. So excited that you're here. If you have not already done so, please silence your phone. That is an important aspect of the evening. But don't silence yourselves. There's mics above your heads. You're part of this. So we want to hear from you. There's going to be different opportunities for you to ask questions during the show, but you can certainly also feel free to laugh and clap and interact as much as you would like to, except for the hecklers. I see a few of you regulars, and this isn't that kind of show. It's not the first time we've had dummies on stage, but it's the first time they don't mind me saying so. Hey, okay. Let's get rid of me. Please give it up for your host and the host of Radiolab, Latif Nasser.
Hi, thank you. Hello. Welcome, everybody. I am your friendly neighborhood Radiolab host, Latif Nasser. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say this event we have planned for you tonight, it may profoundly change your lives. It may profoundly change the lives of your loved ones. And perhaps only because it's gonna make you really annoying them to them with all the factoids that are irrepressible inside of you, which I'm just going to tell you one that has nothing to do with the rest of the show that I just learned recently. Did you know that we all have one dominant nostril for breathing and for smelling? And then a lot of us, there's this thing called the nasal cycle, which is like throughout the day, the dominant nostril switches. It switches. So just think about that. All right. So enough about nostrils. I would like to bring up someone who I care deeply about, one of the greatest reporters I've ever worked with, a man named Avir Mitra. Yeah, if you have listened to Radiolab, you have probably heard one of his unforgettable stories. He did one about vultures. He did one about lead. He did one about this wonder drug, rapamycin. And there's a sort of a secret thing you may not know about Avir Mitra, which is that he has a day job. And his day job is that he is an ER doctor, which is just so annoying. Like every day, he's just going out there, saving lives. And then I guess in his free time, he's like a world-class medical reporter. And then every time you look at him, you're like, why am I not saving lives in my free time? And kind of that feeling, that sort of curious mix of altruism and jealousy, that was sort of the impetus for this event tonight. We want to, Avir has been able to convince me, and hopefully with some special guest friends we have, he's going to be able to convince all of you that not only does he make saving a life look easy, that actually in this one particular way, it actually kind of is easy, and that it could potentially make all the difference. So is everybody excited? Please welcome to the stage Avir Mitra.
You're too kind. You're too kind. Thank you, guys.
All right, what are we going to do?
Just get going? Well,
Let's get going.
I guess I was kind of hoping we could start with a little story.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, so I have a story of one of my first experiences as a resident in the emergency department. Some of my residents are here. They'll probably be able to relate to this story where I finally felt like I knew what I was doing.
Okay.
Okay. So the story goes, there was a patient. She was a 78-year-old woman coming in from Jersey. It was her birthday. And her family took her to see a Broadway show. So they come in, husband's with her, some kids, some grandkids. And, while they're waiting in line, she sort of collapses. Okay, so from here, the family responds immediately. Like, they lay her flat. Okay, they start fanning her. Someone calls 911, literally in under a minute, they call 911. Ambulance comes in record time. Everyone makes way for the patient. And so they scoop her up. The EMS finds that she's actually in cardiac arrest, which we'll talk about. So she's in cardiac arrest. She comes to the hospital, and that's where I get involved in the story because I'm the resident there. And so I'm like a second-year resident, which means I know some things and I'm cocky about it, but I don't know what I don't know type of thing.
Okay, great.
I'm not gonna lie, that's where I was at. So
Okay.
I'm seeing this patient come in, it's cardiac arrest, and I like know my algorithms, and I'm like, ooh, I got this. Like, I'm just like, yeah, let's do it. So we start doing everything. We're doing chest compressions, we start IV, we put a screw a line into her shin so we can put strong medicines in there. So we're putting like synthetic adrenaline in there. We're shocking the heart. We're putting her on a ventilator. We're doing all these things. We're working on the heart for like at least 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes.
Okay.
So I'm there and I'm just like so eager about it. So we shock the heart. We look with an ultrasound. It's not beating. Shock it again. And eventually, all of a sudden, boom, just like that, the heart restarts. Blood pressure is normal. All of a sudden, all these vital signs that were all beeping at me start looking great. And so I was super excited. The family's all around me. They're crying. And now they're crying. I tell them, she's back. And they're crying like tears of joy.
Wow.
They're like, wow, amazing. And I do remember high-fiving a grandchild. This is what I did.
Okay, all right.
Again, I'm not proud of this guy that I was when I was a resident. But so the next step is now she's more stable. So now we have to bring her to get a CAT scan.
Okay.
So that's the story of Mrs. W, I call her. So
Okay.
this is kind of what a good CAT scan of a brain would look like. I know it's hard to see, but it's like a cross-section of a brain, okay? And what you see, you got these nice black ventricles in the middle. You have all this nice brain matter there. To me, this is a beautiful picture. I don't know if you guys feel that way.
Okay.
But what I saw next was this, and this sort of made my heart sink into my stomach. It didn't even occur to me. So it's just me and her in the CAT scanner, and I see this. And what I'm seeing here is that none of those things are there. This brain is dead, all right, completely dead.
Oh my God.
And I guess in my eagerness to sort of be the guy who knows what to do, I just sort of didn't even think about this. And now I'm thinking, oh my God, I just high-fived this grandchild. Now I have to go out and, talk to the family. And I just wanted to disappear. It was like a terrible, terrible moment for the family, and now I'm part of it. So I had to tell them, and I felt terrible because now I have to tell this family that actually your grandmom is brain dead, and now I had to sort of make them withdraw life support, and and I felt like I wanted to save her life, and what I ended up doing was making her sort of die twice,
Oof. Well, how did the family take it? What?
They were very gracious about it. They were very nice, They were kind. They were like, you did everything you could. But it just sort of shook me out of this sort of immature kind of cockiness I had in the emergency department at the time.
Right.
So that sort of stuck with me forever, I guess. And I think about that case a lot. Yeah, and I guess...
Yeah, why? But what went wrong? Like, why did it... what did you do something wrong? Like, what happened?
Right. Well, let's table that, because if we do a good job tonight, I think by the end, you guys will know exactly what went wrong there.
Okay.
So we'll get there. But yeah, I guess that's sort of the impetus for why I wanted to do the show, because I was thinking in our society, we worry about so many things, we wake up in the morning, start doom scrolling, and we worry about, we're worried about climate change. We're worried about gun control. We're worried about terrorism, migrant, all these things, right?
Sharknadoes, for sure, it's up there for me.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Timberlake got a DUI. That keeps me up at night. Sure. We worry about all these different things, right? And the problem is all these things seem so far away. Like, there's nothing we could really do about it, I can't call Justin Timberlake and tell him to sober up. So But like really the reality when you look at it, or at least from my perspective, is like what really ends up killing us. You know, it's none of those things. It's all just comes down to this one object, right?
Right.
It's our heart. And this is what is really the most dangerous thing that we have inside of us, really, if you think about it.
So just take them out. I think the solution here, just take them out. No need to live with that danger. You know what I mean?
Right. Just remove it as soon as possible. It's like an appendix. Just get it out.
Just get it out.
And you know, like the reality is the majority of human beings die because of heart problems. It's not sexy, but it's just true. Like this is across the world. Far and away, like down here we have terrorism, that's 0.03.
Wow,
right? We have all climate change, that's 0.05. I'm not putting any of these things down, like they're real. But fires, suicides, murders, HIVs, somewhere on this list. But cardiovascular disease, it's just insane.
We should like allocate government budgets based on this graph. Okay.
But we do
anyway,
it based on clicks, really, you know, like
right.
what's the scariest looking, you know?
Right.
And in America, it's a little better. In the US, it's only just 1 in 3 people will die of heart problems. So I don't know if you guys want, you know, look to your right and to your left. Figure out which of the 3 of you is dying from your heart. It's one of the 3.
I'm just glad there's only 2 of us on stage. So
right,
we're safe. We're safe.
We're safe. So hearts, a big, you know, we like hearts. Hearts are good. But they're dangerous, you know, in a way. And when hearts do stop, you know, if a heart stops and eventually when it stops, it can really happen, in my mind, one of 2 ways, right? And this is not medical thinking. This is just me being a simple thinker. It can happen slowly or quickly, right? So if your heart starts to die slowly, that's good in a way because at least you can call 911. You can get your way to a hospital, see a doctor, make an appointment.
When you say slowly, like how slowly are you talking about?
I mean, I'm saying like, it's almost like if you're driving a car and the check engine light comes on. Like, you know you need to take it into the shop, but like, you can wait a couple hours, maybe you can wait a couple days.
Right. Okay.
Right?
All right.
That's actually how it happens most of the time, so that's like a good thing. But sometimes your heart stops quickly, right? Like 1 minute it's working, the next second it stops working. And when that happens, we call that cardiac arrest, basically. Your heart arrested. And when it happens, it can happen like anywhere in the world, like right out on the corner here, in a Starbucks, at a Chipotle, you know, and when that
Probably
happens...
disproportionately at Chipotle is what you're saying.
Listen, Chipotle can be healthy if you order the right...
Yeah, go for it. Keep going.
There's a Chipotle next door to my hospital, so...
So that's the ambulance does that trip a lot, it sounds like, is what you're saying. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so... hearts stopping quickly, that's cardiac arrest. And the thing about a heart stopping is basically that means you're dead, right? Because hearts basically just have one job. They're the most simple organ. Cardiologists would try to make hearts sound complicated, but it's actually very simple. You know, livers are complicated. They do a lot of things. Hearts just do one thing. They just pump blood. They're just a simple pump. All they do is pump blood, right? So why is that important? Well, blood carries like everything you need to live. Proteins, sugar, immune cells, whatever. But the most important thing, obviously, that it carries... Oxygen, right? So you need that oxygen. And without oxygen, it only takes a few minutes before your cells start to die. So, you know, it's kind of an intuitive thing. Like when we pronounce a death, we'll listen with a stethoscope to the heart. I'm sure you've seen that on TV and stuff. But actually this idea that a dead heart is a dead person kind of goes back as long as humans have been around. This is going to sound weird, but I was just reading Gilgamesh for some reason. Great book. I don't know.
How do you have time to read? I don't get it.
Okay, audiobook. It was an audiobook.
Okay, all right.
Audiobook of Gilgamesh.
All right.
I highly recommend it. There's an actor that plays the roles, but Gilgamesh, turns out, is the oldest story that we know. It's like the first written story. And even in Gilgamesh, they sort of reference... they say, what is this, you know, someone dies in the story. What is this sleep which has seized you? You've turned dark and do not hear me. He touched his heart, but it beat no longer. So even then I was listening to it and I was like, oh, wow. Like even then, 4,000 years ago, they knew that when someone doesn't have a heartbeat, they're dead.
And that scene was at a Chipotle too.
Yes.
Yeah, at Inc.
No, I know. Yeah, exactly. Double steak.
Yeah. That was the issue.
So, okay. So death, and as long, you know, we've known that a heart stopping is being dead, and as long as humans have known that, there's this other part, which is we've been trying to restart hearts for a long time. It's just innate to who we are. We don't want people to die. So there's this sort of been this practice of like reanimation, bringing a heart back from the dead, that we've been working on for thousands of years. The oldest reference is actually, and we don't have to read the whole quote, but is in the Old Testament here. There's actually this guy, Elisha. Does anyone know? Elisha? Okay. So this guy, what was he, a prophet or he's a prophet. So he did this. So there's this story of when he goes into someone's house, a boy's house, and he goes and sees that he's dead. So he goes in, closes the door behind him, prays, and then lays on top of the boy, puts his lips on the boy's lips, eyes to eyes, and just lays on him.
Whoa.
And then the boy's body grows warm. The boy sneezes and comes back to life.
He sneezes?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, okay, I didn't learn this technique in medical school.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
But I
Wow.
guess it worked. I mean, in the Old Testament, they say it worked.
Huh. Wow. Okay.
So it's the type of thing, if you try this, it better work.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You don't want it to not work.
Right.
So anyway, who knows if this really happened? I don't know. Do you think it really happened?
It says that he was alone with the boy in the room.
Yes.
But the door shut, so who knows?
Oh boy.
True New York skeptic right there. All right. Yeah, so that, who knows? But in the modern era, we've been trying to do this for a long time. Actually, I don't know if any of you guys have seen this picture. We're going to get demonetized on YouTube now, I guess. But this is actually what we used to do to try to bring people back to the dead. This is someone who drowned, and this guy puts a tube up this person's rectum.
Does he know you can't really get to the heart from there?
You know, I'm not sure what they're thinking, but he takes a big drag of a cigarette or a cigar
Okay.
and blows the tobacco smoke into the rectum. This was called a tobacco smoke enema.
And
it
what's the logic here? Like, why do they think this
all
is...
right. I did spend some time trying to put myself in this guy's shoes.
Okay.
And the best I can come up with is nicotine is kind of a stimulant,
Okay.
and the rectum has a lot of tissue. So maybe just blowing a bunch of nicotine at a bunch of tissue was thought to work, you know?
Great. Sure.
But it, no surprise to anybody here, it didn't really work. Actually, the phrase blowing smoke up your ass,
Right.
that's where that came from.
Right. And from the guy next to him when he's like, this is working, right? And he's like, yeah, for sure it's working.
After a couple centuries a couple of decades of this, it just became, blowing smoke up my ass. I get it. But we've tried other things even more recently. This is the bellows technique, where they would take one of those like fire.
That makes more sense. That feels like a more logical
Getting closer.
move. Right.
Not great though.
Okay.
This was another one that was more recent in the 1900s, where they would take the person's shoulders and move them up and down. I'm not sure why, but that's what they would try. And this was another one. They'd put the dead body or the person in cardiac arrest like on a mat or a rug or something, and just roll them back and forth.
Oh, like because it's putting pressure on the chest.
I guess that's what they were thinking.
Right?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, that
putting
makes
pressure
sense.
on the chest, something. So that's kind of all these attempts. And suffice to say, like, it just did not work. Wasn't working. So like all things that I love in science, an answer kind of came from probably the most bizarre place that you could ever think of.
Okay.
This guy, Rudolf Bohm. He's a German guy.
Okay.
And this is 1878. So this guy is a pharmacologist, and he's studying chloroform.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, this is the guy, the big bushy beard. This is kind of the guy that you sort of expect.
And I don't know why they invented chloroform,
Right.
but he was experimenting on it. And the way he would experiment on it is to take cute cats
Okay.
and chloroform them. I know.
Just for fun.
Just for, today he would be labeled a sociopath.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay.
But you could do that back then. So he would just kill these cats, or he would chloroform them. And the thing about chloroform is if you don't use enough, it really doesn't do anything. If you use too much, it kills the person. You got
Or
to
the
get that
cat,
happy
yeah.
medium.
Right.
And so, I don't know if this is true, but this is what I think. He was spending too much money getting all these cats. He kept killing cats. So he's like trying to figure out how can I work on my budget here.
He's trying to reduce, reuse, recycle kind of thing.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So what he sort of, by doing this over and over again, realizes is that if he chloroforms his cats too much, he could start squeezing the cat's chest for a few minutes, and then the cat would survive.
Wow. And that's the guy. That's
And
the guy.
this is the guy
This is how we figured this out.
who
Great.
literally
wow.
the first person to bring a heart back from the dead.
Wow.
Is this guy torturing cats?
Like feline homicide guy is the guy who helps us
Yes.
save ourselves. Perfect. Perfect.
Did you see the? Did you guys see that Netflix show Don't F with Cats?
No, I did not. What, how? Well, it was this guy. It was about this guy.
No, this guy. This show should be called F with Cats.
Oh,
Yeah,
right,
this-
right,
I
right.
think
Of course.
is basically.
Of course.
Okay, so that happened. He publishes this, and it's like, I guess it would be considered the first time that this actually worked. And then lo and behold, no one thought about it for 20 years. 20 years later, a surgical resident, so a young surgery resident, is in the hospital. One of his patients dies, and he somehow heard about this and just tries it on a patient.
This is in Germany again, or
No, this is in, I think this was in the US.
Okay, yeah.
So or maybe England, I can't remember where it was. But this is 20 years later, so the early 1900s. He just randomly tries it on a patient, and lo and behold, it works.
Wow.
So these are the first times that we were able to bring people back from the dead. And since then, we've progressed a very extremely long way. Now we have so many ways to do it, we almost take it for granted.
Right.
You know? Like we can shock people back into a normal rhythm. We can give super strong medicines. We even have machines that will pump for the heart when the heart can't pump. I mean, we're so used to it, honestly, that in the OR and places, people will induce cardiac arrest just to test the heart so that they know what causes it to bring it back on certain patients.
Wow. It's like such a like it's now like a standard miracle. Like it's like just an
Exactly.
expected thing that
It's
we're
like, yeah,
totally
yeah,
fine with.
cardiac
Right.
arrest, let's bring it
Right,
back. So I have a
right.
little video here that I think is cool. I don't know if you guys will think it's cool, but this is a heart. Oh, we got the music too. So this is them in the OR, and this is a normal heart that's beating in a weird rhythm, and all of a sudden it goes into cardiac arrest. You'll see right here. They induce cardiac arrest. Now the heart is dead. It's dying as we speak.
Oh wow.
Okay, and then you hear a shock charging. They shock the heart, and now it's back. And you can hear it by the way they're casually playing Bon Jovi in the background.
Because this guy's living on a prayer. I mean, it does feel like
Yeah. I couldn't have
Yeah.
said it better myself. But basically, it's like standard. This is no big deal, right?
Right,
So,
right,
so you
right.
would think at this point, cardiac arrest would be like no big deal. Like you go into cardiac arrest, we got you. You know,
Yeah.
like this is like a strep throat. Like you got 100%
Right,
survival.
right.
Unfortunately, that's just not the case. The survival rate is
right. Because obviously, if that was not the case, the line wouldn't be as big at the top of the death graph. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's kind of, to me, it's surprising, right? This is our survival rate, 8%. Which, look at that another way. If your heart stops quickly anywhere in the world outside of a hospital,
At any Chipotle all over the world.
any Chipotle,
Right.
Cava, anywhere.
Right.
No one's going to sponsor this video.
I know. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. So if that happens, you basically have a 92% chance of just dying then and there. Right?
Wow.
And that means that, like, I don't know, it's like you never had a chance to see a nurse, see a doctor, make an appointment. You never had any. It's like you had died 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. It's really no different.
But
and
is
that's how a
that-
lot of people are still dying.
But is that a thing? Is that just a thing about the heart? Like the heart it can only be revived 8% of the time, or something?
We'll get to that. Save that question.
Okay.
So just to put this in context, right, or just to sort of explain like why that's happening, right? It really comes down to time. So this is a survival curve, and at time 0, that's like when your heart stops. And you can see every minute that passes, your chances of coming back just exponentially decreases. So, picture it like you're holding your breath, right? Like you're getting no oxygen. How long can you really do that for before your cells die? So
percent is like percent chance you're gonna die.
I would say percent chance that you're going to come back.
Oh, but percent chance you're gonna live. Okay, yeah. Sorry, keep going.
It's technicality, but in this moment, you're dead, right?
Right. Great.
So percent chance that you're going to come back, it like just plummets.
Okay.
Right? And I want you to look around here because, think about in New York City, we have like there's an ambulance on every corner. As you guys know, it keeps you up all night, right? We have some of the fastest response times for EMS anywhere in the world.
Okay.
And the average response time in New York City is 5 minutes and 53 seconds. And
That's
that's
pretty
great,
good.
right?
Yeah, that's
great.
pretty good.
But look at where that puts you on this graph.
Oh yeah, not
right?
good. Not so
yeah,
good.
not so good. You're at like between 10 and 20%. You're probably at like 15% chance of survival right off the bat. And now
Wow.
picture, I don't know, picture you're in Nebraska or somewhere else where a good time would be 30 minutes. I mean, it's just a joke. It would never make a difference.
Right.
So that's the problem, right? And just to put this in context, like think about, just to sort of talk about, is this like a 1 in a million thing? Think about allergies, food allergies that we have, right? Like we restructure our whole society for food allergies, peanut allergies, all these different types of things.
Yep.
That is, I'm not putting that down in any way. That's an important thing, but like about 200 people die from that every year.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that's bad.
Yeah, like kids and stuff. Sure.
Right. But cardiac arrest happens 1,000 times every day.
No.
So I just, that blows my mind, right? Like that's 365,000 times a day, a cardiac arrest is happening outside of the hospital, specifically outside of the hospital.
Right.
So this is like dismal to me, right? Like you have 92% chance of staying dead. It's happening 1,000 times a day.
Right.
And survival is not great.
Right.
So what do we do about it? What can we do? Well, you know what we can do. We have to basically
Torture some cats.
Right,
I think
exactly.
the only solution here. Okay, keep going.
Yes, we have to go back. We have to take our lead from our favorite sociopathic
That's right.
cat torturing pharmacologist.
Great.
And we have to squeeze the heart. We have to compress that heart. That's really the trick. So, yeah, basically, it works. Let's take a look at what exactly is happening. Okay, so it's actually very simple. Don't let anyone make this complicated. Just look at that picture. You have a heart sandwiched between two bones. You have a breastbone up top, and you have vertebrae below it, okay? And all you're basically doing is just sandwiching the heart between those two bones and manually pumping it. So it's basically like if your car died, you're not fixing the car, you're just jumping out of the car and like pushing it down the street, trying to just get it to where it needs to go.
Or you're like Flintstone running underneath the car.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Just,
Okay.
And you can't do it forever, but this actually works. Is it fixing the problem? This is where a lot of people get confused. Is it fixing the heart? No. Is it just pumping the blood around to sort of buy you time? Yes, that's exactly what it's doing.
Got it.
So when you do this, when you do CPR, you'll see that actually survival levels off, right? The minute, let's say at this one, at 2 minutes, you start CPR. Now, all of a sudden, your survival goes down much more gently. You're buying yourself time for someone to come in and do something about it.
Right.
So I guess that brings us to like the real question is, what would you do in this situation? That's the question. Because the truth is, like, when this happens out in the world, a lot of us just freeze.
Right.
And I can't help. I'll be at work. You'll be in the recording studio.
Right.
So it really just comes down to you guys, right? Like, what would you do? Really put yourself in that situation, because it sounds good on paper, but like, imagine you're just walking down the street and someone collapses, or you're with someone and they collapse. Like, would it take you 5 minutes to start CPR? Would it take you 15 minutes? Would it take you 30 seconds? Like, all those seconds really matter.
Right.
So that's sort of, when it comes to like, what would you do? Our next guest that we want to bring up sort of had to ask themselves that exact question. So I really want you to hear from them. And, they weren't expecting that either. But they really had to ask themselves that exact question. So I want to introduce our next guest, but I just have to like hype them, because the guy I'm about to bring out, he goes by Dr. Glockenflecken, but we're bringing him, Will Flannery, and his wife, Kristen Flannery, out to talk to us. Now, I know about him because of this. Basically, I don't know how to explain this, but like, there's not much that doctors agree on. Different specialists of doctors don't agree on anything. Like, there's nothing we see eye to eye on. There's only one thing we all see eye to eye on, is this guy's TikTok channel. He makes comedy videos for healthcare professionals that literally are like spread like wildfire. They're the most funny videos, and we all spread them around.
Veer has been starstruck like all day.
Yes, yeah, I know. I can't wait to get off the stage just so I can watch what they have to say.
Great.
But yeah, so this guy is like literally the Elvis of medical comedy, I swear. I mean, he's amazing. So I want to bring up Will Flannery and his wife, Kristen Flannery.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Hi, everyone. So yes, I am a internet comedian ophthalmologist, which I swear is a real job. That I made it up, but it's still a real job. If you don't know what an ophthalmologist is, though, I am an eye surgeon. So that means I went to med school and I learned everything there is to learn about the human body, the entire human body. And then I said, I don't want to do any of that. It's like, I'll just devote my career to the eyeball. And that's what and so now I'm a practicing ophthalmologist, and Kristen has been with me since the beginning.
Not since birth. We're not siblings.
Not too far after. We met in college, and I went on to med school. Kristen went on to grad school. We were at Dartmouth, and went through college, med school, and now into our lives after medical education and training. And but our story, I want to talk with you. Our story really starts it starts a long time ago, but we're going to go to 2020. The pandemic hit, lockdown occurred, and I don't know. So here's something you should know about ophthalmologists. We try to avoid the hospital as much as possible. All right, that's just, we're outpatient doctors. The hospital scares us, you guys. And when the lockdown occurred, my practice shut down, so I couldn't see any patients. So I had all this free time on my hands. I did start making TikToks around that time. But there were a few times where I honestly thought I might get redeployed to the hospital to help out. And do you know how bad a public health emergency has to be for someone in the ICU to be like, are there any ophthalmologists we could get up here? Now, fortunately, it didn't happen. Like, there were plenty of more qualified people than an eye doctor to go help out. But I had all this free time on my hands, making all these videos, trying to do virtual ophthalmology, which is as hard as it sounds. And then disaster struck. And on Mother's Day in 2020, we had a wonderful day. We were at my in-laws' house. We had a nice meal out in the backyard. We had
social distancing.
Yeah, exactly.
From my parents.
We had
very weird, but it was nice.
we had a water balloon fight in the backyard. I was the kids' target, and that day, Kristen took a lot of photos, and those were almost the last photos that were ever taken of me, because later that night, I had a cardiac arrest in my sleep.
At around 4:45 in the morning, after we had gone to bed, he decided that I had had too much attention on Mother's Day and he was going to take some back. No. I woke up to him making some very strange sounds. Fortunately, they were loud, and I'm a mom, so I'm a light sleeper. All you moms know exactly what I'm talking about. And I woke up and I thought he was snoring. I was still really groggy. I'm not in medicine. I studied cognitive neuroscience and then education and marketing and community, basically everything but medicine. Bodies are gross. And so I didn't know what I was hearing. I thought he was snoring. I did the thing that you do, like, quit it, you're waking me up. And like tried to get him to turn over and stop snoring, but he wasn't responding. And he was just something about the how he wasn't responding kind of raised a red flag, like, whoa, that's weird. And I couldn't put my finger on why, but it just didn't seem right. And so I tried a little bit harder, still nothing. And so then I started to get a little freaked out. And so I started kind of slapping his face a little bit and yelling his name. And then he still wasn't responding. And I had no idea what was happening, but I knew this isn't right. This is very bad. And so I just did the only thing I could think of to do, which was I called 911. And it was the most bizarre period of time in my whole life. I I sort of part of my brain was like in the moment and just like really focused on like what needs to happen and just like, in emergency mode, thinking of all of the logistics of things that needed to happen now. And then another part was just sort of, it was almost an out-of-body experience. Like, I wasn't the one dying, but I was the one having an out-of-body experience, just sort of watching myself and this scene unfolding, and just feeling like, what? Like, this is just so wrong. He went to bed perfectly healthy. I take that back. You were not perfectly healthy. He had survived testicular cancer 2 times before that. So, like, he's used up 3 of his 9 lives so far, but hopefully...
I had a little bout of cancer.
Yeah. But that wasn't anything, we had moved
I was fine.
past that. He had been completely healthy, cleared, all these things. And it just seemed so wrong that anything would be wrong with him. He doesn't have a family history of any cardiovascular incidents, really. He didn't have a personal history. So it was just the most bizarre thing. And I was leaning my head over his chest as I was calling 911, and I was sort of noticing, like, part of my brain registered, like, oh, it's not moving. There's no breaths going up and down, and I don't hear anything. There's no heart beating in here. But it was just kind of like, that's interesting. I couldn't really fully process that at that time, but I remember taking note of that. And so then the dispatcher came on and they asked what the emergency was, and I said, my husband won't wake up. And the dispatcher asked me what I have since learned. I did not know this at the time, but I have since learned there's only 2 questions that you need to know the answer to know that it's time for CPR. And that's, is he responding to you? And of course the answer was no. And is he breathing normally? And that word normally is very important, because I would have said, yes, he's breathing. In fact, I think I did say, yeah, he was breathing, kind of like taking these weird gasps, and then he would stop for a bit, and then he started breathing again. I've learned since then that's called agonal respiration. It's the body's last ditch, unsuccessful attempts at breathing in air. But it's not real breath. And so that second question, is he breathing normally? The answer to that was no. So because he was not responding and he was not breathing normally, she said, I'm going to walk you through CPR. And I said, what? It didn't make any sense. But I just said, okay. And I followed her instructions. And she told me, she asked me if I could move him off the bed. We were in bed. It was the middle of the night. And so I said, well, I can't move him. I don't know, if anyone's just listening to this, you can't see this, but I have heels on. He's got a good 13 inches on me and probably 100 pounds. And more than that, I had neck surgery 4 months prior that I was still recovering from. And I said, I can't move him off the bed. And she said, okay, if you can't move him, we're just going to do it where it is. And I'm so glad I did not know this at the time, but that was bad. That was, you need a hard surface. Preferably, if you can get the person to a hard surface, do that. But I could not. And so thankfully, we do have a very firm mattress, thanks to my neck. So that was good. But I did, she told me, put your hands on his chest, lace your fingers together, put your hands on his chest, in the center of his chest, between his nipples, and just push hard and fast. And she just counted with me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just over and over and over and over for 10 straight minutes. It was May of 2020, and we live not far from the station that responded to my 911 call, but they were in full hazmat gear. They had hoods, shields, the whole suit, gloves, everything. And so they had to wait outside of our door, put all the gear on, and then try to get in the door, which turned out to be locked, and so they had to try to kick it down.
Never been so happy to have structural damage to our house.
That's right. I will take it any day if that's what it means. And so they finally, were able to do all of that. But in the meantime, that was 10 minutes of looking over my husband and the father of my 2 children, who were 8 and 5 at the time and were asleep in the very next room. And I was thinking, they cannot come in here. They cannot come in here. Because I didn't want them to see what I was seeing, because you can never unsee that. And they were so young. And I was watching him turn blue and then purple. He stopped making those noises eventually. And by the time EMS arrived, he was gray. And even then, I didn't know what was happening. I had no idea what was wrong with him, other than this isn't good. But I saw them take him off the bed, carry him downstairs, and lay him down on the hardwood floor and hook a bunch of things up to him. And, I may not have medical training, but I have watched television. And I heard things that should be beeping. I knew this. They were making a flat, solid sound and a flat line. And I knew what that meant. And so I turned around. I remember this really distinctly, unfortunately. I turned around to go back up the stairs because I wanted to check to make sure that the children were still in their beds and weren't trying to come out. And I didn't want to see what I knew was about to happen, because I saw them take out the paddles. And as I went up the stairs, before I could even get halfway up, I heard them deliver that first shock. And I heard the way that his 6'4" all arms and legs body just slammed against our hardwood floor in a really unnatural, weird way. And from there, I just went up and I was trying to figure out anything useful that I might be able to do, or just a thing to keep busy, to keep from breaking down. And so I packed him a hospital bag and I called into his clinic to tell them, I don't think he'll be in today. You might want to reschedule his patients. And I called both of our sets of parents. And, during that time, some of the paramedics, one of them was coming up and down the stairs and giving me updates. And he told me that what had happened was Will's heart had gone into ventricular fibrillation. Did I get that right? Okay. Which is what you saw on the screen, where when they stop the heart, it just sort of shakes like this, but it doesn't actually pump any blood anywhere. And the sounds that I had heard were those agonal respirations, and that meant that his heart had stopped. And but thankfully they were able to get his heartbeat back after they shocked him 5 times. They didn't give up on him, and their hoods and shields were fogging up, and they would have to switch off. And it was such an effort, and a team effort, to get him back. And they didn't give up on him, and they did get his heartbeat back. And they took him to the hospital, and I went into my children's bedroom and I asked them what they would like for breakfast.
And so, just to put a little bit of a different context on that, from a healthcare professional, 10 minutes of chest compressions, that's an eternity. Like 2 minutes, you're supposed to pass off to somebody else because it's so hard to continue doing effective chest compressions after 2 minutes. And even I know that as an ophthalmologist. And so I still don't know how she did 10 minutes.
Oh, I know. We had just gotten a mortgage and we had 2 young children. You were not getting out that easily.
That's why.
Come back here, sir.
And we have the 911 call that sometimes we'll play when we talk to audiences. And the amount of poise that she showed under that amount of pressure, like, I just let you know, like, during that call, she told the dispatcher, like, the code to our garage door, the cardinal directions to our bedroom. At point one, where she was like, we're in the northeast corner of the house. Our house is not that big. Like, I wouldn't know that when I'm not doing chest compressions on a loved one. So I can't say. And now here's the thing: when your wife saves your life, you guys, like, you don't win any arguments anymore.
He never did to begin with.
And so they took me to the hospital, and from my perspective, I went to bed one night. I woke up in the ICU 2 days later. I didn't have any underwear on. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And one of the first things I remember was my ICU nurse. His name was Roger. And he was asking me questions, trying to get me to remember my life. And by the way, he was also the first person to ever, we've been through so much, the cancer diagnoses, so much in the healthcare system. He was the first person in all of those things that we've gone through together to ever ask Kristen how she was doing. And I feel so much love and admiration for him and what he did to facilitate phone calls between the two of us, because again, this was COVID. Like, she couldn't be in the hospital with me. And so I remember talking to her. I'm sure I was probably not speaking very well at that point, but I do remember those phone calls. And then I had all the testing done in the world, and we still, to this day, don't know what caused my cardiac arrest, which is not unusual for young people that have an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. Often, we don't have a good answer for why it happens. But I remember I woke up. I remember the day of discharge pretty vividly at that point. Sitting on the edge of my bed, and they bring a box into me, and I open up the box, and I pull out what looks like a bra. And it was an external defibrillator that I got to wear for about about a week. And it was, for all intents and purposes, you guys, an electric bra. This was, because normally when someone like me comes into the hospital and has a cardiac arrest, they get a defibrillator implanted before you leave the hospital. But because of COVID, all that surgery was shut down. So I got to wear my electric bra, for a good week. And now I know just how amazing it feels to take a bra off at the end of a long day. And then I had to go back to the hospital to get my defibrillator placed a couple days later. And I was very confident at that point. I was like, if I survived my cardiac arrest and cancer, this is no big deal. And I tell you this just because there's so much more to surviving something like this than just survival, like just the event, right? There's so much more that goes into the care afterwards. And so I went back to the same hospital, and I remember I was sitting in pre-op, and my surgeon walks in, and he says, he sits down, and that's, something serious is about to happen when your surgeon sits down in pre-op. He says, Will, when we put your defibrillator in, we have to check and make sure that it works. I was like, what does that mean? He said, we have to stop your heart to make sure it fires. And I lost it. I started crying. I've never been more scared in my life. I was like, do you know how hard my wife worked on this thing? Like, we just got this thing going. And then they were wheeling me into the operating room. I'll never forget this. They were wheeling me into the operating room. I had tears streaming down my face. And in that moment, the anesthesiologist looks at me and he says, "Are you nervous?" And then he did the most compassionate thing any physician's ever done for me. He gave me all the Versed, like in the hospital. So, and then I was out. And I guess my ICD works because I'm still here. And then got to go home, see my family.
And after he came home, the weird thing about surviving something like cardiac arrest and lots of other things too is, once he was home, I thought I should feel happy now, right? We're past it. We did it. I saved him. We saved him. And he's back and he's still here. A lot of people, if you don't get CPR right away, the blood it doesn't go through your body, and so your organs and your brain don't get enough oxygen, and you have brain damage, organ damage, all sorts of horrible outcomes can happen even if you survived it. And we had avoided all of them. We had the very best outcome that you could possibly hope for. And I was so grateful for that. But instead of feeling happy, something really strange happened, which was I disappeared inside of myself. You know, I could get through the logistics of a day and do what I needed to do to take care of my children and put food on the table and those sorts of things, but I couldn't really hold a conversation with anyone. Like, language just sort of, whew. And I went inside my mind to what I called the quiet place. And if any of you have ever experienced something traumatic, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I think it's our brain's way of protecting us and helping us gather our strength again to come back to ourselves. But in those, I don't know, weeks or months, I was just a walking zombie, kind of. And that was something no one had prepared us for, that, like you said, there's so much more to surviving than just walking out of the hospital afterward. There's this whole emotional component that comes with it. And the first cancer, when we had one baby, and the second cancer when we had two babies, and the cardiac arrest when our babies were 8 and 5, like, all of those things happened in his body, but they happened to me too. And Roger, as he mentioned, was the first one that noticed that occurred to, and asked me how I was doing. And so ever since then, it's been my mission to share this concept and this word of co-survivor. I am a co-survivor of this cardiac arrest. And there are so many more co-survivors out there, and we just have not had the language to identify ourselves. But it's so powerful when you do, because you can find others like you who know what it's like to have gone through something similar, even if it's not exactly the same. And you can explain to others why this is bothering you so much when it didn't even happen to you, you know. But it's because it did. It did, just in a different way. So I always try to remind people to watch out for the co-survivors in cases like this.
And, you know, as a physician, I never once thought to myself, like, when this happened, I had been a physician for like 7 years. I never once thought, hey, maybe my wife should know how to do CPR. Maybe my family members. Because if something happens, I'm usually there. I'll be the one to help.
We never thought about it happening to him.
Yeah, I was the one that needed it. And I'm sure those of you here who know CPR probably have a family or friend who doesn't. And it's, and going to Kristen's point about the co-survivorship, you know, learning how to do chest compressions is so important. But if we're going to ask people to do chest compressions, we need to support people who do it.
Especially because most out-of-hospital cardiac arrests happen in the home. So the people who are responding are the other people in the home, right? Which is going to be your loved ones. And so, you know, doing CPR as a trained medical professional in a hospital setting is one thing. Doing CPR on a loved one in your bed in your own home is a completely different thing.
And so we want to thank you all for being here and listening to our story and learning about chest compressions. And I think it's so important. And spread the word, everything you hear about tonight, because, you know, the next life that is in your hands might be a loved one. So thank you all.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm kind of curious. Like, how did you explain all this to your kids?
We sat them down in a theater like this. Made sure there were cameras on us. No, Kristen, do you want to take that?
That was the one question that I had for the paramedic that was giving me information. After he told me everything that had happened, he asked if I had any questions, and I said, "What do I tell my children?" Because I thought, well, of the two of us, you're the only one who's maybe done this before. So, and he was a little bit taken off guard, but he gave me some great advice that really was helpful, which was, he said, you know, just tell them the truth, but essentially don't be scary about it, right? So he helped me come up with what to say, and I said, you know, well, your dad got really sick during the night, and he needed some help and some machines that we don't have here at home. And so, but they do have them at the hospital. And so people came to help him and take him to the hospital. And we're doing everything we can to help him get better. And we don't know a lot right now, but I'll tell you when we do know things. And this is what I know right now, and I'll tell you when I know more things. And they were satisfied with that at the time, at those ages. But I will say it's an ongoing thing. It's not what did you tell your children, it's what do you tell your children. Because as they get older, they start to understand different pieces and different aspects of it. And, the 5-year-old at the time was just like, okay. But now she's really afraid of, what if it happens again? Because now she has a better understanding. Now she's 9. She knows that he died, essentially. She understands that now, and she didn't then. So it's an ongoing process of filling them in. Yeah.
I just want to almost like to pause the show for a second. If there are questions in the audience, are there any questions that any of you have? Yeah, sure. Here. Oh, we got a mic there.
Thank you for this whole presentation. Do you still have the defibrillator?
I have I kept my bra as a probably just a prop for future videos on TikTok. But no, I do. I have it right here. So it's a subcutaneous defibrillator. It sits right here, kind of in my armpit. I don't even...
It's under the skin.
Yeah, it's just right there. There's different types of defibrillators. So someone, with my health, I didn't really have much of a health history, and I'm relatively young, so I got more of like a less invasive version of the defibrillator. There's other ones
Sport model.
Yeah, exactly. You got it.
Defibrillator light.
And I try to think about it too much, but I do. And now 6 years from now, I have to go back in and get the battery replaced, which is doing the same thing again.
They'll have to do it again.
So, but it hasn't gone off, and I've been totally healthy since.
His online persona is Dr. Glockenflecken, so I like to think of it as Dr. Schockenflecken. And so far, it's brought a lot of peace of mind that it's there. Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, we got one right here. Yeah.
So if you hopefully not have an event at some point in the future, is it unnoticeable or does it shock you across the room?
It's
what actually happened?
If it does go off, I've been told that it feels like getting kicked in the chest by a horse. So anybody ever been kicked in the chest by a horse?
But it beats the alternative.
I hear it hurts. So I've talked to other survivors, and some people, other survivors who have had it shock them. And actually a lot of them have symptoms, because your heart is not beating normally. And pretty much immediately when that happens, you start to get lightheaded. You start to feel like you're going to pass out. And so some people actually do pass out before it shocks, because it has to register that there's something, an abnormal rhythm. So some people are awake, some people are unconscious by the time it happens. And you just hope that you're not doing something dangerous like driving a car if something like that happens. So, yeah. In fact, I was told I wasn't allowed to drive for 6 months after this happened. That was one of the things I was told on discharge from the hospital, which I thought was really interesting because I was allowed to do eye surgery again. I guess I could take out more people on the road, but anyway.
Maybe do eye surgery while you're driving.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Did this event change your activity, or have you changed your activity, diet, anything? Anything special you're doing now?
Yeah, it changed for a little while. It changed my activity. For actually a few months, there was a lot of fear. I was afraid of being alone. I'm a pretty active, athletic guy, and but all of a sudden, I didn't feel like I couldn't go run on the trails that I would run on, because what if no one could see me, and what if it happened again? So I would have never gone on a trip to speak somewhere, because I might have to stay in a hotel room by myself. So it's those things that are second nature to you before, all of a sudden I had that fear, and that has faded with time. And now I'm able to live. I got the okay from my doctors. I can live a normal life and do everything that I did before, fortunately.
Any other? Oh, we got a bunch. Okay, yeah. Mike's coming to you.
Thank you for your story, but I'm curious, is the dispatcher normally do CPR? Because that dispatcher is really the one who, you didn't know it, and who stayed with you, and that just is so touching. So,
I agree. Her name is Lisa, and she's my hero. And I got to meet her, and the first thing I did was go up and give her a big hug. And the same, I mean, it was reciprocal because we were the only two people, you're right, in that moment together. I mean, he was there, but... So, yeah, it's becoming more common, but it's relatively newer. It's called dispatcher CPR, where they provide instructions to you over the phone to do hands-only CPR. It's not always recommended to do mouth-to-mouth anymore either, which I think is good news for a lot of people. But hands-only CPR is really effective as well, and she walked me through it, yeah.
First of all, I love your black outfit.
Oh, thank you.
But my question is for you. Your brain stopped for like almost 10 minutes. Do you have this new superpower, or do you feel you were smarter beforehand and now getting dumber?
I don't know. What do you think?
Look, I can only work with what I was given, okay? But they told me that he didn't lose any cognitive function.
Yeah, I do think I'm cognitively intact. No, I had lots of. I still have some patchy memory around the event, so there are still some things that I don't. I always get the timeline wrong, But it was worse before. That's gotten better. I remember probably maybe 3 or 4 days after I came home from the hospital, I called my best friend and told him what happened. And then 2 days later, I called him again to tell him what happened. He was like, yeah, we just talked. Like, I know.
Yeah, for the
I had no recollection that I had. So it was very strange to just totally not remember certain things.
For the first few days, it was like 50 first dates, like I literally had written out on a sheet of paper every night. I would update it, and I would say, here's what happened to you. Here's what you have to do. No, they don't know why. All the questions that he kept asking, and every night I would just update that with any changes and put it by his bed for him to wake up in the morning. And yeah, lots of loops where that, it's very common for there to be some short-term amnesia in the days immediately following. I should have. It really would have been great. Missed opportunity.
I am funnier though now, right? I think so.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I think we had one more question. Oh, okay, we have two here, so we'll do them quick. These will be the last two. Oh, sorry. Okay.
We could do it.
Okay, fine. We'll do last three. Go for it.
So I actually work in the ER. I'm in emergency psych, and I'm around a lot of ER docs, and I've been surprised to hear quite a few of them say that they're DNRs, that they would not want to undergo CPR because it results in a lot of broken ribs and frequently does not work because it comes too late. Now, granted, I'm in some pretty war zone type ERs, and they're rough places. A lot of these guys are pretty jaded, and they say some things that are kind of affected. Like, I've heard a lot of them say they wouldn't go through cancer treatment because it just is so, like, horrific to the, the things that it does to the body, and it's like not targeted, and like the things they say are almost like, anyway, what do I just wanted to hear your response to that.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't break any of my ribs, which is, I don't know how that happened, but it's, that's deciding if you want chest compression. It's such a personal decision, and that's a difficult conversation. And I've had those as a physician, had those with patients, but it's I'm not going to be DNR anytime soon. So especially when she's so good at resuscitating.
Hey, did you actually ended up teaching CPR to your family? And if so, how do you go about it?
I didn't teach them, but I made sure that they were taught. Yeah, and that's so my parents, my brother, sister, yeah. I've talked about it. I have a huge audience on social media, and I talk about it. I try to talk about it as often as I can, and so that's a big, hands-only CPR is a big point of advocacy for us, and so yeah, definitely.
And we talked to our children about it and how to do it, and we purchased an AED to have in our home actually afterward, because we don't know what caused it, so we don't know if other family members are at risk. Yeah. And better safe than sorry. So we have one, and we taught them how to use it, and I think we taught them when they were, I think it was shortly after, so 8 and 5, and it's, the good news is it's not a complicated maneuver. Even the AED, it just walks you right through it. It's easy enough that they understood it after just one time. So yeah, anybody can do it.
We got one more.
This is the final question. I think it pertains to all of us, but it's for all of the medical professionals. Could you do there's stop, drop, and roll, when there's a fire? Is there can you drop a 10-second hit for us on CPR?
Call, push, shock.
What's it?
Call, push, shock.
So yeah, call right away. Yep, and then
push is the
push.
hands-on CPR.
So interlace your fingers. Try to lock your elbows if you can, and just push hard and fast in the center of the chest, 2 inches deep. Allow for complete recoil of the chest, and just keep that going.
That Bee Gees song, "Staying Alive," is a good one to have in your head.
There's a handful of songs that you can do this to, but in general, it's
There's
just
playlists on Spotify even if you want to look it up, which ones have the right tempo.
push hard and fast, and then until an AED can show up either through EMS or if you have one on scene, and then shock.
That's the perfect question to segue us to the next section, but please thank the Glaucom Fleckens. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. And I'm going to bring back out a veer.
Thank you, guys. Amazing. So, should we switch sides?
Whatever, let's switch sides. Okay, go for it.
So yes, I heard your question from backstage. You're going to know more than you ever wanted to know about CPR. You're going to be doing CPR soon. So basically, I think you're probably wondering what causes cardiac arrest. We should probably just address it. A lot of different things can cause a cardiac arrest. It could be a genetic issue. It could be a really bad heart attack. It could be electrolyte problems, drownings. Literally anything can do it. And sometimes, in this case, we never know why it happened.
Very comforting. Thank you so much for that.
I know. Yeah. So what you just heard is literally an 8% type of outcome. That is very rare, what you just heard. And the goal is to make that more common,
Right. And so why 8%? What is the thing that makes is there something, I feel like I asked this question before, but is there something about the heart that makes it only work that many times?
Right. Yeah, exactly. You could think, is there something inherent to the heart that, it's 8%? Turns out no, because it turns out there's a place in the world where you can have a cardiac arrest and you'd have much better outcomes. So I don't know. Do you want to take a guess where it is?
Oh, a place where if you have a heart attack or a cardiac arrest.
Cardiac arrest, yeah. So we should say a heart attack is a different thing than a cardiac arrest.
What's a heart attack?
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So yes, all right. We're getting into the weeds, but I'm sorry if I'm geeking out. I'm sorry. A heart attack is this very specific thing that happens a lot, but we said that the heart's only job is to pump blood. It needs some of that blood for itself. So it pumps some of the blood into these little vessels back into itself. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that because of our diet and our lack of exercise and stuff, those little arteries, they're so small, they can get clogged. So when that happens, you have a heart attack, and most of the time you just start feeling chest pain, and half of your heart is not working. So it's your car is breaking down, but it's still driving, That's a heart attack. If it's a really bad heart attack, it can lead to a complete stop of the heart. That's cardiac arrest. So a heart attack is one reason you can have a cardiac arrest, but there's a lot of different reasons you can have a cardiac arrest.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Side note.
Okay, so back to the question you were asking, like, what is the place where, like, what's the ideal place to have a cardiac arrest?
Yeah, maybe we should
basically?
ask. Yeah, like, do you guys have any? If
Okay,
you had
any
to have a cardiac
guesses?
arrest?
Hospital.
Hospital.
Where was that? I would
What?
think like a nursing home, maybe.
Nursing home.
Chipotle.
Chipotle.
We got a Chipotle. That's great.
No
Do you work for
church?
Chipotle? Okay. Anywhere else? Just name places. Who knows? What's that? Denmark. Okay, that's good.
Denmark.
The gym.
He knows
maybe?
something.
No?
Okay, so I'm gonna shatter all your
Okay.
beliefs. The best place to have a heart attack is a casino. Yes.
And why is that?
So, you know, it turns out that it's the perfect practice space for cardiac arrest. You have a lot of elderly people,
Okay.
right, at a casino.
Okay.
They periodically lose a lot of money and get very stressed.
Yeah, no kidding. Right.
And they often manage that stress by doing potentially unhealthy things like smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol.
Okay. So it
cardia-
sounds like a perfect place to have a heart attack or a cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So you know, cardiac arrests happen a lot at casinos, and everybody there is on camera, and everybody who works there, like the dealers, you know, everybody, they're all trained in CPR. So as a result, the survival rates of cardiac arrest in casinos, and this was done in all of Las Vegas, Reno, Philly, Memphis, is actually 53%.
No.
It's
Well,
unreal.
save your life, but take your shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Sorry, residents, it's not where we work. It's not.
Damn. Wow.
Yeah. So that, to me, that's saying, like, you know, we can do something. If we could do CPR, we can really increase these numbers. So the question is, you know, like we said, why don't we do it? And is it because, like, we don't care about each other? Is it that, you know, are we just jaded? Or, you know, what are the reasons, I guess? I guess, you know,
Like, what are the reasons it's 8%?
yeah,
and not
what are
53%.
like, yeah, what are the reasons when someone has a cardiac arrest, we don't snap into action on average, you know? I like to think it's not because we don't care about each other. I think it's other
People,
things.
it's just fear, shock. Like if
Yeah.
you're seeing that happen, it's like the spur of the moment.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have any things
Okay,
like hesitations.
guesses. Well,
yeah.
Great.
That's a great question. So you asked, what does cardiac arrest look like? Can we save that? Because I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But yes, you'll know. Yeah.
Because CPR costs money. Oh, learning CPR costs money? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Learning CPR costs money.
Yeah.
That's true.
Get sued for assault. Like,
You don't want to
break
get
someone's ribs and they weren't having a cardiac
Suit.
arrest.
Right.
Lawsuits.
Don't want to get sued for
New York
for an
City.
assault.
Yeah.
Legit. Someone else is going to do it.
Someone else might do it. You guys are literally saying all the things because
Right.
you know, people have studied this, and what are the top reasons that people don't do CPR? It's not because we don't care. So we're going to go through the top 3 reasons. One is fear of failure. You know, in the moment, you don't want to be like this guy, basically, right? You don't want to be like, I got this, and you're like, you don't know exactly what's going on. There's a lot of that, right? You don't want to fail. You don't want to hurt the person. And there are, you know, CPR can injure people. Like, it often breaks ribs. You can puncture a lung, do all these things. You know, it's not great. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes it happens. And if they're
When I was in EMT, that's what the head of the EMS taught me is like, don't worry. When in doubt, do CPR. You can't make it worse if they're dead.
you
You
said
can't do worse than dead. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
expert
That's
on the
great.
Old Testament and on CPR. I love this.
Love it.
Yeah, exactly right. You can't make it worse, right? Okay, so fear of failure, that's number 1. 2, fear of litigation, like you said. Exactly.
Brilliant.
You know, yeah, we don't want to get sued, right? Okay. Number 3 is fear of infection, right? CPR was invented before the era of, you know, HIV, communicable diseases, and nobody wants to exactly be doing mouth-to-mouth with a dead person, you know? This is a Walking Dead
we need
reference.
this slide?
We needed it.
I don't really know. Okay.
Oh, come on.
All right.
Walking Dead, anyone? Yes. R.I.P., right? Yeah, I don't know. Okay, I get it though. Mouth to mouth is kind of gross. Like a stranger just collapses and now you got to make out with them, you know?
Right.
So let's address these concerns, okay? Addressing the first concern, which is fear of failure. How do we address that? Who mentioned Denmark? You mentioned Denmark. Yeah, you know something, because this is a picture of Denmark, it turns out. In Denmark, they made a rule in 2000 where they made CPR training mandatory to go to school, to graduate school, and to get your driver's license. So everyone got exposed to CPR. And it turns out even if you totally zoned out for that class or whatever, just having that exposure once increased the chance that they would do it. And their survival rates from CPR went up over the next 10 years from 8%, where we are at, to 22%.
Wow.
And so the good thing is the U.S. has followed suit. Now most states in the U.S. do require CPR training to graduate high school. In New York, it started in 2015.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So yeah, I graduated a little late for that, but you know, if you have kids, they will know how to do it. So that's a great thing, is just exposing everyone to CPR once, which is what you guys are going to get here. The next one, fear of litigation. It turns out there's Good Samaritan laws that exist in most states, including New York. So, you know, if you do CPR, if you jump in an emergency and you cause harm, you can't be sued for it. You know, there is Good Samaritan laws. You're acting in the best interest that you knew at that time. All right, so then what about fear of infection? Right. That brings us to what Will and Kristen were talking about, which is sort of a new form of CPR that's trying to make things a lot simpler, and it's just hands-only CPR. So normally, you know, CPR, it's like 30 compressions, 2 breaths.
Yeah, that's all I remember from learning it in high school or whatever. It's like,
yeah,
it's like counting the breaths and counting the pumps. And
which, like, I can't even, I do this for a living, right, and I don't understand. I don't know where those numbers came from. And like you said, you got to take a class. You know, it's expensive. You got to get a card. Like, we don't have time for that. So what they sort of invented, because they knew no one was really doing CPR, is hands-only CPR, where it's literally just push hard and fast on the chest. That's it. And they were saying, well, maybe they thought maybe this will do, you know, it won't be as good, but maybe it'll be something. And actually, when they found out, they have been studying it now for a couple years, head-to-head trials, this is producing the same outcomes as the big fancy CPR, just pushing hard on the chest. And the reason is, you know, when you're pushing on someone's chest, you're kind of squeezing their lungs a little bit. You know, you're getting a little bit of everything. So, yeah, so hands-only CPR, that's kind of where we're going to be at, because I want to teach you guys how to do hands-only CPR. So if we can have Al come up. Yes, Woo! Give it up for Al.
Woo! From the Red Cross, everybody.
They're from the Red Cross. They sponsored this. They're bringing all these amazing dummies. So we're going to show you guys how to do hands-only CPR right now. Should we bring down should we get a little music going?
Yeah.
Let's get a little music going. So what do you want to tell them?
I want to basically demonstrate CPR, hands-only CPR, and give them step-by-step instructions on how to do it.
Right. So you demonstrate. So you're going to put one hand over the other, okay? Do it in the middle of the chest, and then you're just going to push hard and fast down on the chest. You want to go about 2 inches. It's harder than it is on the movies, but you can see that right there. That's good CPR. Another thing to notice is he's not moving his arms, because that you could do it. It's just tiring. So what he's doing is sort of moving his hips like this. Use your hips as a fulcrum and go up and down, like just like that. Does that make sense? Awesome. All right. Thank you, Al. Basically, you just do that. Woo! Woo!
All right. Okay. Yeah.
So should we take some questions?
Yeah.
before?
Are there any questions, or should we just like jump into it? Do we have any questions? Yeah.
You're all gonna. Yeah.
If you thought you were gonna get away, we got a question way back here. Oh, of course. Of
it's
course.
a new workout we're doing.
That's the real benefit. Okay, we got a question back there.
If a defibrillator is available and somebody, is it best to just go right to the defib machine?
Great question. So we didn't talk about AEDs, these defibrillators. What is that? So basically with CPR, we're sort of just pushing the car manually, keeping the blood flowing. An AED gives you a shock. So if you have an AED, you can hook it up to the patient, and if the reason was an electrical issue that caused their cardiac arrest, you can shock them back into normal. So AEDs are great. Compressions need to come first. So if someone's doing compression, someone else can look for an AED and someone else can call 911. So I'm not anti-AEDs, they're good, but the compressions are the number one thing, because again, we're just trying to get blood flowing while we figure everything else out. But if you can shock them back, you know, the quicker you can deliver a shock to bring them back, the better, for sure.
I've got some questions right here.
Would you want to try and push over the heart as opposed to in the middle?
No, you could push in the middle because you're pushing that sternum, you're pushing that breastbone down into the heart. So right in the middle is just fine. Yeah. Oh, here you go.
At what age do you have to be concerned about breaking ribs? I mean,
at what age do you have to be concerned about breaking ribs? It can happen at any age. As you get older, it can happen more often. So yeah, there are complications to doing chest compressions. You can break ribs. If you break a rib, it hurts. It heals on its own. You know, people do fine. If you puncture a lung, you have another lung, and I can fix the first lung. So, yeah. But yeah, that's not to say, you know, and we should address, you know, there's articles that say CPR, there's downsides to CPR. Who's this psychiatrist that was mentioning that? You know, there are, you know, downsides to it, and you got to think about it this way. Like, out of hospital cardiac arrest, you want to do CPR to bridge that person to get to a hospital. And the real problem happens in hospital CPR, where someone may be at the end of their life, and families don't know much, so they don't know the details, so they say do everything, and that includes CPR. But you have to think, like, what are we bridging this person to, or are we just pushing on their chest to bring their heart back just so they die again because they're at the end of their life? So it's the problem comes when people don't really understand what CPR is doing, and they just want it done, but it doesn't fix any problems, and it hurts. It buys you time to do something. But if there's nothing to do, then, you know, it's not a great thing. So for me, if it's out of hospital cardiac arrest, like, I want CPR done to at least get me to a hospital, and then if they think there's nothing that can be done, fine, you know.
My question was a follow-up about the AED. Would it be useful, like, you know, people get Narcan just to have on hand, like, would it be useful for folks to get AEDs?
To have an AED? Yeah, I mean, sure. They're supposed to be in all public places. Like, I'm sure there's one here somewhere. And there's actually an app called PowerPoint, or Pulse Point, and that'll tell you where all the AEDs are. It'll geolocate and be like the closest one is there. So you could download that app too.
Are there any other questions?
Any other questions? And before we get into it?
I think it's burning now. Like, when do you do it? It's just
Right.
urgent now to know.
Perfect. All right, so let's talk about that. So let's start with, when do you do it, okay? When do you do it? And this goes back to your question of, what does cardiac arrest look like? So you have to remember, when someone goes into cardiac arrest, they become dead people. So they look like dead people. They collapse and they don't wake up. For the most part, they won't be breathing. Like you heard in the last story, if it just happened, sometimes people will make these really weird gasping breaths, not regular breaths, but like every 10 seconds there'll be this like gasp. And that's like them actively dying. So for the most part, the person will look like a dead person. So when do you do it? The question is, what you want to do is you want to look at the person, and you want to see if you see any breathing. If the breathing is very weird, then go for it. If there's no breathing, and you can wait like 10 seconds, take a look. You know, it's hard in New York City where there's a lot of people, a lot of my patients are just laying out on the street, right? Like, and they look dead sometimes. So you got to look, and then you see a chest rise, and you're like, okay, they're breathing. So that's what it'll look like. That's when you start. All right, when do you stop? You stop either when the patient wakes up, and they'll let you know when to stop. And I've been there.
That as if
yes.
that's happened to you before.
Oh yeah, I've definitely been in a situation where like, get off of me. You know? Okay. So there's that. Or when EMS arrives, that's when you stop. And then how do you do it? We just showed you, and you guys are going to practice it.
Yeah. Okay. So there was like one final question, I feel like, somewhere. Yeah.
What about babies?
Ooh, good question. Do we have any baby ones today or no? Okay, that's okay. Babies, infants get sort of 2 thumbs in the chest, and you just squeeze them, kind of like what they did with the cats. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow. Okay, any more questions? Any last questions before we're gonna do it for real? Yeah.
Thumbs until about how old? What is the? Let me ask you,
Thumbs until
so
how old?
infants, how old do you do?
Newborn to the age of 1 is considered an infant. 1 to the age of 13 is a child. 13 and up is an adult.
So what do you do with
An infant, you would do 2 fingers. It's called the encircling thumbs technique in the center of the chest. For a child, you would do 1 hand, and then for adult, you would do 2 hands.
There you
All
go.
right.
Nice. Yeah, I don't do peds.
Okay, so we're gonna do it, everybody. We are going to do it.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna have 4 dummies on stage. We're gonna have 4 dummies in the hallway over there. We have a terrific team here. Avir, do you want to introduce our whole team here?
Yeah, so our compressors, come on up. I want to introduce you. These are some of my residents. So we have Anna, Jeanette, Ty, Ashley, Jacob, and Charlene are going to be teaching you guys. These are my residents. I got them out of work today to do this, so give it up for them.
All right. We have this heart-shaped disco ball here. Can we turn on the disco ball?
Oh, that one's
That
on.
one?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. We need some music because the
we're gonna
tempo, right? We talked
right, and so they talked about that Spotify list. It is called CPR Jams, I believe.
Yeah.
So we're gonna put on some CPR jams,
Yeah.
and we kind of want all of you, if you're game, we want all of you to try it.
Yeah, so let's have people come up and
Don't
be afraid.
Because what was you had a last thing you wanted to say before we start?
What did I want to say? I just want to say that, my thinking about this is like, for all the modern medicine we have, at the end of the day, when it comes to this, all we really have is each other. So that's why I feel very strongly about this. We got to help each other out. So come on up.
All right, everybody, come on.